Hello. Welcome, everybody. Kirsty Salisbury here. Welcome back to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast for one of our live sessions. So wherever you are in the world, a huge welcome to you. Don't forget to subscribe so you stay updated with any notifications of other sessions that we're doing. Today, I'm very excited by our conversation because it's something that I think about all the time. It's something which we'll probably chat about this a bit more in our call, but it's the topic of life reviews, and not everybody who has a near-death experience gets a life review. And then I hear all of these amazing stories of people who haven't had a near-death experience, but they've had some kind of spiritually transformative experience. And they have the similar thing. They have a life review. So there's so many things I think about on this topic, and it's one that we haven't talked about a whole lot. So today, to join me, we have got Jeff Janssen. Jeff, I want to welcome you to the live stream. Welcome along.
Yeah, it's great to be with you and whoever's watching out there.
Yeah, it's going to be great today. So if you've just joined us, if you haven't heard the episode where I'm chatting to Jeff Janssen has done such amazing research. He's researched over 2,500, so 2,500 near-death experiences. And what he did was brought all of that together into an amazing book called The 10 Life Lessons from Heaven. So Jeff researched all of these experiences, pulled out the common themes, the main things that were coming up time and time again through these experiences. He wrote his book. I've read his book. Go and buy Jeff's book. It is amazing. It is just so interesting. And so Jeff and I have been chatting for a little bit. We've stayed in quite good touch since we did our episode. Do go listen to that if you haven't heard it. And Jeff said that he's been doing some amazing work. He's helping people, parents who have lost their children, lost loved ones, helping people with grief, and having not just the counseling side of that, or I don't know the right word, but bring in the spiritual element into that as well. Understanding what his research in the near-death experiences brings into grief and how we process loss. So we're going to get into that a little bit later on. But Jeff, you've done some amazing research. I mean, 2,500 experiences that you've researched, all of these themes that came out. I know that this was triggered when you were 42. So for the people that don't know your story, jump on in, share what happened when you were 42 years old.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thank you again for having me on your show here. So yeah, 42 years old, just, cruising through life like most people are, with a job and a beautiful wife and 2 kids and a dog and all that. And just, head down, focused on career, focused on family, living this life, and had some chest pains that I thought was heartburn originally, and had a couple bouts of those over the course of 2 weeks, but just kind of didn't really pay too much attention to them. And then I was getting ready to go on a trip, and I was just bringing up an empty suitcase from downstairs, upstairs to get ready to pack. And I felt this again. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe to be on the safe side, get this checked out. So I went in, and they said, well, Mr. Janssen, I think you're going to be fine, but why don't you do a stress test just to be sure? Went in, did a stress test, and I just had crushing pains and pain radiating down the left arm. And like, Mr. Janssen, get off this treadmill. We're going to give you a nitroglycerin tablet. You've got a very severe blockage in your widowmaker artery, and found out it was 99% blocked. So they went in, did a catheterization, and fortunately were able to put 2 stents in versus the whole open heart surgery. And that episode obviously takes you from the focus you have on your life into, oh my goodness, I was 1% away. So I call it my physical near-death experience. I didn't have the spiritual ones we've been studying about, but it definitely threw me for a loop. And I'm glad it did, because as you said, over the last almost 10 years now, when I read the book about 2 years ago, it was 2,500. I'd say now it's probably 3,500 or so that I've looked through, and just have become really fascinated by near-death experiences. And as you said, a couple of years ago, put together the 10 life-changing lessons from heaven, and I'm still intrigued by this stuff. So now I've been looking into the whole life review thing, and that is such a fascinating thing that obviously I'll share some of my latest research on tonight.
Yeah. Oh, I just can't wait. So if you tuned in live, if you are listening, you can put your comments in. You can leave a comment and we will be able to answer that. So if you've got some questions for Jeff, or if there's anything you want to discuss further, any more information that you want, just pop it in there, leave some comments. We will probably come to them a little bit later. So Jeff, where do we start? That many experiences that you've researched, life reviews. How many people have life reviews?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously different stats out there.
Yeah.
Anybody who might have read Bruce Grayson's recent book, After, I think some of the stats he has is over 50%. Other people show maybe only 22%. So it varies. And I actually had a chance to talk to Ken Ring, who hopefully, if you've been in the NDE world, you know that name and you know his amazing book, Lessons from the Light. And in our conversation, I think what we had come to is maybe not everyone has one, partially because of the reason sometimes near-death experiences are pretty short and shallow. There may be just the out-of-body experience for a bit, but then you're kind of sucked back in quickly, and it's not as long or in-depth of an experience. So I think that part of the reason why the numbers may fluctuate and certainly be lower than probably is actual is because that some of these experiences may be shorter and shallower. And the other part, I think, is, as we've learned, is that NDEs, near-death experiences, are extremely customized to people. And some people, for whatever reason, may be more spiritually developed. They may not need a life review, or they may need something out of the experience. But my hunch is, I would say a great majority of people would at some point have a life review as they continue to hopefully go on into the afterlife, because my feeling and from studying all these is that this life is a school and we're here to learn, and that life review is one of the absolute most influential tools to learn about how our choices here either brought more love into the situation or extracted some love from the situation. So I think it's a really essential part of the near-death experience, and hopefully moving on to the afterlife, that life review is so educational for people.
Definitely. So were you saying, and what you just said there, were you saying that potentially if you have a longer near-death experience, you're more likely to have a life review?
That's my hunch, and that's, talking to
Yeah.
the expert, and I'm sure Bruce Grayson is up there too, but certainly Ken Ring, who studied so many of these, that's our hunch on this, is that, in Jeff Long and Jeff and Jody Long's NDERF site, almost 5,000, the 5,000 NDEs chronicled there. Is if you really read a lot of those, which I've read a lot of those, some of these are very short and shallow, and they're, as I said, maybe an out-of-body experience, maybe a bit of the love, but some of the other ones are much more deep. And certainly in Eben Alexander and other people have had, it's hard to say time-wise, because as we know, time is hard to measure on the other side, if it's even there at all, or it's simultaneous, sometimes people say. So it's hard to say length. I would say maybe the depth of it. That I think the longer you may be, or the deeper you may be in that experience, the more likely you are probably at some point going to get or have, or however you want to call it, that life review.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense. Definitely. Now, as we're going live here, I can see a couple of people jumping in. Hi, David. Hi, Lorianne. A few people there without actually the usernames. That's fine. If you want to ask any questions, just start to put those comments in and we can ask those questions directly to Jeff. And if you're enjoying this, if you want to show your support to Jeff, just give him a like or give it a love heart or whatever icon you're on. We're streaming to different platforms here. So just show your support by doing that. That goes direct to Jeff. And don't forget, you can check out his book, The 10 Life Lessons. So life reviews. I think probably the biggest question is, this is the question that I hear a lot of, is why do some people have a life review and others don't?
It's a good question. As I said, I think it goes back to the customization of the near-death experience, not only as the scenery that you may enter into, whether it's for me, I love deserts, so I may end up seeing more of a desert scenery. Other people may see more of a field or meadow. Other people may see a jungle. I think the same thing in terms of the experiences that you have in that life review. Some people may see deceased relatives. Some people may see certain deceased relatives. Some people may see a spiritual figure. Some people may see a life review. So it does seem like whatever experience you're supposed to have, or is probably, quote, the one that's going to be most helpful and influential to you, is very likely the experience that you will have as a near-death experiencer. So the life review probably is a pretty good choice for a lot of people, especially if they're coming back here, which obviously in NDEs, they are coming back. And those who are not coming back, they probably are going to see it too. But for those who come back, if you look at all the elements of the NDE, the out-of-body experience, the unconditional love, the relatives, all those things certainly hugely impactful. But this life review is unforgettable because you get to experience, you get to feel what everyone else felt based on your words, your deeds, your inaction. Sometimes you feel all of that, and you come back that much wiser, that much more empathetic for people, that much more patient. So it really rocks your world to put it that way, that you are a pretty, as we know, NDErs are pretty much different people. I would say this is one of the major elements why.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think about life reviews all the time, and they do crop up. I possibly think about them a little bit too much, where they do, you know what I'm talking about, right? They do affect how I live. And so in a way, I guess that's probably quite good. And I do think about what is the other person feeling, or how am I treating them? And, I'm no saint. I get upset about things. And so, yeah, I find it really interesting because I do think about life reviews and I think, will this show up in my life review? I wonder what things show up. Is it just the big significant things which have a huge impact on somebody, or a lasting impact? Or do we see every moment? Like, people talk about how your life flashes before your eyes, how you see everything.
Yeah. Well, Christy, if you don't mind, I will share some of the examples of life reviews in that presentation
Absolutely.
we have. So let's go there. And then I think that'll be helpful for everybody. Hopefully
That'll be wonderful. Thank you. So I'm carried away with my questions because
no
I just
problem.
love them.
They're great.
All right.
So I'm assuming you can see that. We talked about the why me in the intro there. So we're good.
Yep. Okay. So you just run with that.
Yeah, I'll run with that. And I talked about this already. So let's get into this here. Just a quick overview of the life review after looking at so many of these. And for the vast majority of them, it is a birth to death kind of thing. You're going to see everything. And it's ultra high definition. I'll give you some examples of that. It's panoramic. It is all around you. Some people talk about it's almost like entering a large basketball arena, and all around you in this sphere is every event from your life, from your little toddler walking over there to trying to ride a bicycle over there, to your first kiss over there, to your prom or your marriage over there. And all these events are just going on around you. So it's this multi-screen, and it's not you're watching it, you can enter into it. You can feel it. You can experience it again. Robert Baer, who is very involved in IONS, he's talking about when he was a little kid, he used to go over to a neighbor's friends, and the mom used to make him Kool-Aid. And she used to make a little special version with all this extra sugar in and all that. He could taste the flavor of the Kool-Aid that he had way back, probably 50 years ago when he was a young kid. So it's just all these experiences. And for many of them, they re-experience everything, thoughts, feelings, actions, all of that. And you not just see it from your own little perspective, but this is what's so mind-blowing is you see it from everyone else's perspective. You see it from your parents' perspective, your wife's perspective, your dog's perspective, your coworker's perspective. Your whole life is seen not just through your eyes, but you get to jump in their body, their brain, their feelings. That's probably the biggest part. You feel every compliment you gave them, you feel that yourself. Every criticism you gave them, you feel that yourself as well. So it's just a really, as you can see, an educational kind of thing. And you understand their viewpoint. You understand how the choices you made during the time that you were here had an impact on people. And I'm just getting chills right now thinking about that, how just the gravity of that kind of stuff. And not only do you see that, but you see the ripple effect. You see
Mm.
that when you're mean to someone else, that energy that you put onto them, negative energy, now they're frustrated and they go and talk to somebody else in a very mean and short and impatient way. And then that goes to somebody else. And they then are frustrated with their dog or frustrated with whatever. And Mary Neal talks about, I saw the ripple effect of one action that I had sometimes 25 times down the road. So the way I
Oh,
talk about that
wow.
is if you have a chain of dominoes and they're falling over, yeah, you're the first domino, but you get to see the 25th domino that may happen states away, countries away, people away. You get to see
Mm.
your one little action, what happened 25 times down the road and more. So you really start to see, oh my goodness,
Yeah,
everything I do matters. It makes a
it
difference.
really does.
Yeah,
That totally blows my mind because the other thing that I hear a lot is the little things. We're talking about purpose. People feel like they have no purpose. But what I just saw, I've got quite a visual imagination, I suppose. I'm physically seeing these dominoes tipping over, and then it just takes one domino to not tip, to break that chain reaction, right? And
exactly.
so the smallest of actions, yes, they can have the ripple effect, but they can also stop the ripple effect. And so when we think that our actions don't matter, and it may be just smiling to somebody in the street, and it seems
Right.
so silly and insignificant that that could be a part of purpose.
Yeah.
But if that means that that person's put in a better mood and then they don't transfer their emotions into the next conversation they have, that's like the stopper. That's breaking that ripple effect, isn't it?
It is in the short term, and here's what you're talking about that just triggered for me. Rajiv Party, who had a pretty intense NDE and has his book. It's dying. I think it's dying to be me or dying something. Rajiv Party, and he talks about not only did he see the short term ripple effect, but he had some physical abuse in his life and some emotional abuse from his father. And he got to see it wasn't only his father, but it was his grandfather, it was his great grandfather.
Oh,
He got to see generations back that this cycle had happened over and over and over again. And he looked at his own life and his own NDE and life review, and he saw himself continuing that. And exactly, he was given the challenge, you know what? You can be the domino who stops this from the future going on. And he made that commitment after he saw and felt, I don't want to continue this chain with my children and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren.
yeah.
I want to be that person who makes a choice to stop that moving forward. And he has.
Oh my goodness, this is amazing. I will never look at dominoes the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
and it totally weaves into your life lessons, doesn't it? Because that's a lot of the life lessons that were coming. Do you wanna run through quickly just what the top life lessons are?
yeah, I mean, there's the top one, as everybody might imagine, is loving unconditionally. That I think
Yeah.
is the real reason, and all the other ones are subsets of that. But learning to love others unconditionally and learning to love ourselves unconditionally. And that's, we get all these opportunities with people we love, with people who are challenging
Mm,
to see if we
mm,
can show this. And then that's really why I go back to that school analogy. It seems like we get all these opportunities to see, and then at the end of our life, guess what? You're going to get the movie of your life, and you're going to get a chance to evaluate, how did you do in that situation? Did you show unconditional love, or did that frustration take over and you acted out of your ego or you acted out of your fear? So I think it's that learning opportunity. As I said, here's whatever you've had, a decade, 2 decades, 10 decades. Here are all the
mm.
opportunities you had to display unconditional love. And how did you do? And as we'll talk about as we get into this, we're not evaluated from the divine. We're not evaluated from the guardian angels or the spiritual guides. We're not evaluated from our ancestors who may be also watching our life review with us, which, can you imagine
Oh
that?
dear.
You're not only going to watch this
Yeah.
yourself, but here's God sitting next to you watching things, and you got your guardian angel
Yeah.
over there, and there's your great grandpa back there, all sitting away watching your life review.
Oh my
And it
goodness.
just, I
Yeah.
mean, it absolutely seems mortifying to me. But the good thing, I guess, is that end of years tell us, you know what? They're not judging you. You are
Yeah.
evaluating yourself. You are seeing, did you respond with love or did you not respond with love?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's hard to not get a little bit overwhelmed by that though, knowing that
Yeah,
everyone's got tickets to the show, they're all gonna watch it.
it is.
So interesting.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll share an
Yeah,
incident
carry
here.
on.
This is one, Roland Webb. It's one that stays with me and I think stays with everybody else. He said, I saw myself at 5 years old. I was in the neighborhood where I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was with my brothers and sisters and my neighborhood friend whose name was Heidi. Heidi was maybe a year younger than us. We lived in an apartment building. On the bottom floor of the apartment building, there was a beehive on the windowsill. I said, Hey, Heidi, pick up that stick and whack that beehive, and we're going to run and see if we can beat the bees. So Heidi, listening to me, I don't know why, picks up the stick and whacks the beehive, and we all took off running. The apartment building had a really dark green door. Everyone got into the apartment building, and the last one to approach the door was Heidi. I had a devious thought in my mind. I'm going to hold the door and not let Heidi in and see what happens to Heidi. All those bees from that beehive stung the daylights out of Heidi. Every single bee sting I felt. I felt every sting. The burning sensation and the swelling. His mother came out of the apartment building scared and frightened. I felt all her fear, all her fright, and all her rage. His father came out trying to figure out what happened. I felt it all. It rippled. I felt every single thing. All the bees, how angry they were. I felt it all. Every aspect. I felt everything. If
Whoa.
that doesn't kind of
Yeah.
get you to think twice now about some of the behaviors you may have, I am
Mm.
not sure what would. I'm not a big fan of bees, so that one has definitely stung me, to use that pun, but it's one that I think sticks with people as well. Any thoughts on that, Kirsty?
Yeah. Oh, that blows my mind. It really makes us think how we treat people, doesn't it?
It does,
It's,
and this is just one incident when he was what? How old was he growing up? And for the vast majority, it's every incident, good and bad.
I know,
It's
I
like
know.
the
So
whole
it's
thing opens up again, and we see it and feel it from everybody's perspective, and we get so much understanding from
mm,
those choices we made.
yep. It just
I'll
blows
give
my
you some
mind.
more stuff as well too. So this is Renelle
Yep,
Wallace,
keep
a
going.
great book, The Burning Within. She said, a brief scene flashed before me, a series of pictures, words, ideas, understanding. It was a scene from my life. It flashed before me with incredible rapidity, and I understood it completely and learned from it. Another scene came, and another, and I was seeing my entire life, every second of it. And I didn't just understand the events, I relived them. I was that person again, doing those things to my mother, saying those words to my father or brothers or sisters. And I knew why for the first time. That's one of the things too, is you not just see yourself doing it, but it's almost like you're a psychologist and a psychoanalyst, and you get to see now, oh, that's my intent. That's what drove my behavior. That's why I did that. Not only that for yourself, but you get to see that for everyone else too. Entirety does
Mm,
not describe the fullness of this review. It included knowledge about myself that all the books in the world couldn't contain. I understood every reason for everything I did in my life, and I also understood the impact I had on others. So, I mean, just every element of this just gets more mind-blowing for me as we go on, but it's, you can see how powerful of an experience, and going through something like this can't help but change you.
yeah, I totally. Yeah.
So I'll give you some more here as we're going in, and same thing. The life review, it's very high definition. So this comes from Danny and Brinkley's Secrets of the Light. When you have a panoramic life review, you literally relive your life in 360-degree panorama. So that's what I was talking about before, with all those things going
Mm,
on around you. In astonishing detail, you see everything that has happened. For example, you can count the number of hairs in the nose of the doctor. I don't know if you want to, but you can,
Yeah.
according to Daniel, who delivered you at birth. You can even see how many leaves were on the tree in the front yard when you were 6 years old playing in the dirt. You literally relive it all. And then Tom Sawyer, when he got in a fist fight with some people, I relived every exact thought and attitude, even the air temperature and things that I couldn't have possibly measured when I was 8 years old. For example, I wasn't aware of how many mosquitoes were in the area. In the life review, I could have counted the mosquitoes. Everything was more accurate than could possibly be perceived in the reality of the original event. So not only are you just seeing this, you are seeing this at microscopic
Mm,
detail that
mm.
you can see how impactful, again, this would be.
Definitely, and it shows the amount of detail as well, that the amount of information that you can retain, when people have their near-death experiences, they talk about how they suddenly understood everything,
Yeah.
and that's a really big concept to understand everything, but when you listen to these, understanding the amount of hairs on the nose or the leaves in the garden,
Or
it's
the
not just
mosquitoes in
about
the
having
air.
that
Yeah.
experience. You're feeling the emotions of people, you're feeling what you're going through, you're feeling their experience, your experience, all the different angles, plus knowing every detail about everything.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. It's
It
just
It
yeah.
absolutely is. It absolutely is. I'll give you some more here too. So we kind of
Thank
talked
you.
about this already. You experience situations through the other's eyes. And I love that cartoon of the 6 or the 9 on the floor,
Yeah,
because
that's cool.
most of the conflicts that we have is because, hey, I clearly see from my viewpoint this is a 6, but no, from my viewpoint it's a 9. And that's, what these quotes are basically talking about. During a life review, many of us don't just experience our own feelings, but we experience the feelings of everyone else as though they are other people, as though all the other people participating in our lifetimes are joined. This gives us an immediate and powerful understanding of the effect that all of our words, actions, and behaviors have had on those around us. Some of it felt good and some of it felt awful. All of this translated into knowledge, and I learned, oh, how I learned. And since we talked about that, I want to make sure we get through to some other things. I'll skip over this one then as well. Here's, we mentioned this one too,
Yeah.
so we don't
Yep.
need to talk about it as well, but I talked about Mary Neal. It's in her book, let's see, From Heaven.
Oh,
I
yes. I
remember her
can't
book.
remember it right now.
Yeah, but
I know that I can
you
reference
can
to it
you can
after.
Google it,
Yep.
but we've talked about the dominoes and how that 25th
Yeah.
one you can trace back to the other one there. This one is one that gets into that generational stuff that I talked about before. The life review continued all the way down to 3rd grade. I was teasing a smaller girl. I'm feeling how it feels for her to receive my actions that are very hurtful. I'm not only feeling her sorrow and her pain, but I am also sensing and understanding how my actions are impacting her future life. I'm now seeing, sensing, and feeling that she will become much more shy and introverted for the rest of her life because of my actions way back in 3rd grade. But not only do
Mm,
I sense and feel that, I also feel the pain and sorrow in her parents, because she's now going to turn out more shy and inward person. I'm really feeling the full consequences, not just how my actions are changing the life of this little girl, but I'm also feeling how my actions caused ripples far away, not just in her life, but in her parents' lives, in her whole family, also in everyone around her. So I get the full spectrum of the full consequences, all the links in the chain, all the dominoes, in essence, spending a few minutes in a schoolyard teasing a girl.
mm. We can't underestimate anything, can we? The smallest moments, the smallest decisions.
It is, and certainly
Yeah.
if they're unloving, we cringe. I cringe at the things I've done. I sent a
Yeah.
note to a kid, a grade school kid, after reading through all these that I was very mean to, and I sent him a copy of my book, and I said, I am so sorry. There is no excuse for how I treated you, and I just wanted you to let you know this is so late, and I apologize for it, but I wronged you, and I'm owning that right now. And I
Oh,
have not
Jeff.
gotten a response from him, but I feel
Oh,
like at least I have let him know, and I've owned and taken responsibility for something that I was not proud of and won't be proud of when I look at my life review. But hopefully, in his honor, I'm going to be nicer to people and and create a positive ripple. I can't go back and change that other one other than ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
But hopefully moving forward, I can keep that in mind and not have other people who feel that way because of what I said or did to them.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. If you do hear back, I would love to hear the follow-up on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I talk a lot about
we're
regret.
Facebook friends, and he
Oh,
likes
are
stuff
you?
of mine,
Okay,
and
well,
I
you're
like
getting
stuff of
closer.
his. But I never got any kind of, I wasn't expecting it. I didn't send it to get some
Yeah,
kind of response. I sent it because I truly felt bad for how I had treated him, and I wanted him to know that. So
yeah.
yeah, these are things. I'll give you a couple more here. This is one that's really stuck with me, and actually, this is the one that made me send this apology because it made me think of him. This is Marion Rome. She's got a great book, Beyond Sight. Marion Rome, if you're out there, she's one who is not one of those NDers who's kind of does the different talks or things. She's just kind of gone dark after she wrote her book, but it's probably one of my favorite books, Beyond Sight. And she said,
Mm,
I had been shown my entire life from birth to my death. During this life review, I saw the consequences of my actions for other people. There was a time when a classmate of ours got a Superman outfit on his birthday. Every little boy at the party wanted to try it on, and so did Oliver. Alas, he was too heavy for the costume, and when his turn came to put it on, he couldn't close the zipper. Everyone was laughing, and I said, he's not Superman, he's super fat. And I kept repeating this over and over again, along with the other kids amid the general laughter. Now my soul could feel every single bit of his pain, emotion by emotion, and in a much more powerful way than we can experience it on earth. I could feel everything he felt that day because of me. Sadness, shame, distress, anger. I could see him after the party crying alone in his room, wondering
mm,
why other kids always made fun of him. It broke my heart in a way I can't begin to explain. What was strange, although it seemed totally normal and natural while it happened, was that I was both actor and spectator. I was everything at the same time. I was me, but I was also the sadness of Oliver. And that's, this multi perspective. You're yourself seeing
mm,
it, you're Oliver seeing it, you're Oliver's parents wondering what happened, why is he crying? We went to a birthday party, you're all the
mm,
other kids who are Oliver's super fat, Oliver's super fat. And I mean, you see it all, and you can't help but learn from a situation like that.
definitely, definitely. I want to come back to that point. I've got a
Okay.
question around, children and things like that, but carry on with your presentation, and
Okay.
then,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're almost toward
I'll
the
come
end
back to
here,
my
but I
question
just
for
wanted to
that.
share these. So Marion,
Yeah, brilliant.
Marion shares the tough one, but Marion shares a great one too. And she said, I was walking up an escalator that was out of order when I saw an old and frail woman trying hard to make her way to the top. I was carrying numerous shopping bags as well as my own large handbag and a huge backpack. That woman looked exhausted. I told her to stop there, that I would help her. As my soul was witnessing the whole scene, I felt her smile. I felt it in an incredible and magical way. I felt like I was hugged by it. Her smile was pure joy, tremendous happiness, and relief. It screamed, thank you so much for helping me. That is so kind of you. You really have no idea. What I was made extremely aware of during my NDE was the simple fact that I had taken time for her, had filled her with enormous joy. In that amazing afterlife, her joy was now my joy too. My entire
Mm,
being was filled with every bit of it in such an intensified way. And it is a sensation I'd give anything to feel again. So we've been talking about the bee stings and the
mm,
super fat and all those other ones that, yeah, we definitely regret and we're going to feel. But I also want people to see that, wow, these positive things that you're doing for people and the ripple effect that's going to create as well is something we're also going to enjoy. It's not
mm,
just torture, and it's not done to torture us. That's really what I want to emphasize with people, is that we don't watch all these things to torture us. That's the last thing they want to do. It's done to teach us. It's done to show us how our decisions and actions and inaction, as I said, didn't just stick with us, but it had a ripple effect across the ages, across time, across
yeah.
space. And I
Yeah.
think I've got just a couple more. This is Ken Ring. And, you talk about karma, what you put out in the world, boy, you're going to feel that yourself. And
Mm,
Ken Ring
mm,
says every act, every thought, every feeling, every emotion directed toward another, whether you know the person or not, will later be experienced by you. What you send out returns, which is exactly karma. What could be a more perfect form of justice than this? Everything you do becomes yours. It is not that we are rewarded for our good deeds. And this is, I love this part. It's not that you're rewarded for your good deeds or punished for our cruel ones. It is simply that we receive back what we have given out and exactly as we have done it. So
mm.
the divine, the angels, ancestors aren't up there, oh, we're good, we're going to punish them or we're going to reward them. It's like, you know what? Whatever you put out in the world, bam, it's coming right back at you. And
Mm,
you
mm.
are experiencing some of the questions, and these threw me for a loop, but some of the questions I thought of is, what is it like? What would I feel like if I was married to me? What would I
I ask this
feel
question
like?
all the time.
Yeah. What would I feel like if I was my own parent? What would I feel
Yeah.
like if I was my own boss? And sadly, it took me a week. I thought of this about 3 weeks ago, and it took me a good week to kind of say, oh, I don't know if I like some of the answers to those questions, because
Yeah.
when I really tried to put myself in some other people's shoes, people that I love and care about, it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to be my own spouse,
Mm,
or I don't know if I
mm,
want to be my own dad. So
mm.
it gets you to think about, boy, ugh, what can I change? And that's what I've been trying to do is, be that person that the quote I would want to be married to, or I'd want to have as my dad, or I'd want to have as my boss or coworker or whatever else.
Mm.
So this is that golden rule that's a part of it. So these are kind of my ending questions for people to think about. And in addition to the ones I just mentioned, what do you think your life review is going to be like? Certainly there's going to be good stuff. There's going to be not so good stuff, but you're going to learn a lot from it. Which events and situations would you really look forward to seeing again? Do you wonder how your influence played out on people? There's one story that I'll share real quickly. I had an eighth grade football coach who was just a pivotal, influential, trajectory changing person in my life, and I've stayed in touch with him. Well, my father passed away about 20 years ago, and this coach, Coach DeBrune, came to this funeral, and I hadn't seen him in probably 20 years. And I was so happy to see him. And he said, you know what, Jeff, I don't know if you know this, but your dad was actually really influential in my life. He was about 10 years ahead of me, and
Oh,
he was in
wow.
this play called Babes in Toyland. And he was someone who had a major impact on my life. And I'm getting the chills again right now. My own father influenced the guy who was the most influential coach in my life. So you talk about generational, how things come back around.
Yeah.
And that was a perfect example. So I would love to go back and see the influence Coach DeBrune had on my life. And I can probably go back to the other dominoes where my dad actually influenced his life. So there's that good part. And then there's other situations, as I said, it motivated me enough to actually send a note to a guy I had had no contact with probably in close to 30, 40 years. But I felt
Yeah.
compelled, yeah, I need to offer that forgiveness. And then last but not least is kind of the motivating force here is how knowing that you're going to have a life review, and you don't do it just because, oh, I don't want to see that in my life review, but you want to be proud of your life when you're done with it and
Mm,
how things
mm.
go. So yeah, here's that 10 life-changing lessons from heaven book that I have a lot of these in, but now I'm doing some more research.
Well, you
Oops,
got the
back
image.
further. Yeah, and there's the 10, if you want the 10 life-changing lessons that are there, those are those as well. And that's just something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
I was
gonna
gonna
talk
talk
about
about
these.
these. Okay, yeah, let's go with
Um,
those.
these are
These are
amazing. I
amazing.
said when we talked the first time I wanted to put this on my wall. I think about this time and time again, and I think one day we're gonna chat, Jeff, and I will have painted this onto the side of the wall where I can look at it
I'll
every
take it.
day, because these are just so phenomenal. They're so simple, and yet they're incredibly not easy. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
these are like the foundation of everything, aren't they?
They are. I'm just going to check our time here so that I know where we are.
We're all good. We will
6:40. We're good. Yeah, we're doing well.
we will
So
keep We've got a few questions coming in now.
Okay,
If you want
good.
to ask some questions directly to Jeff, now is the time to put them into the comments, and we'll just keep going with that. I'm going to post that image with the life lessons again, and I've put it into our Facebook group and onto the page, places like that. It's just so amazing. So I'm going to start to go through our questions. I just got to scroll
Great.
back a little bit. A few people saying hello. That's wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay, now David asks, I'm reading in ACOL that learning is sometimes followed by revealed awareness. I guess that's a comment more than anything else.
Okay.
Okay, so a question that we have here. Thank you for that, David. It's great to get your comments. I'd love to hear what people are thinking as they're listening to this. I want to make sure that all of the conversations that we have are relevant. So do let us know. Okay, so Stuart says, has your research revealed any insights on the shared death experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's some certainly as I've gone through some things, and actually, I had what I would say is a very shallow shared death experience when my father passed away. He had been a song leader at our church, and one of the things we just felt compelled to do was to sing all the songs that he had sung in our church, and I felt like I felt that peace that passeth all understanding, as a lot of the NDers phrase it. And I can remember being out in the parking lot after he had passed away and saying to my sister, I this is one of the most, I thought death was going to be scary and horrible, and yeah, it wasn't pleasant losing my father,
Mm,
but the sense of peace that I had. So I think I had a small bit. I was just shocked about the peace that I had with it. And yeah, there are sometimes the shared reviews where people are going up with the light and they are seeing people kind of handing them off. There are some incidences where they get to see some of the life review as well too. So
wow.
yeah, there are those experiences, and obviously those are great experiences when people are talking about, well, the NDE is just the dying brain and all that stuff that's going on. Well, then how come that person's brain was
Yeah,
also a part of that situation as well, and their brain wasn't dying? So
exactly. They're
yeah,
perfectly healthy.
there's some
Yeah.
there for sure. And I think Raymond Moody's got his whole book on the shared death experience.
So do you know what people say when they come back and they've had a glimpse of the shared death experience?
What do they say? I mean, they get a chance to get a step into that afterlife as well too. And
Mm,
their mind, I think, is definitely expanded that, oh my goodness, there's a whole lot more going on than I thought. And I think there's that sense of peace too, knowing, oh, okay, they're not just going into nothingness. I saw them going into this light. I saw
yeah.
ancestors, or I saw angels welcoming them, greeting them. So, boy, they're probably going to be okay. That looked like a pretty
Mm,
good place. I wish I could have gone there in some cases. So, yeah, I think it provides a tremendous amount of comfort to those who might question what's happening to them.
exactly. And because one question that I've had before is, does everybody have a life review at some point? So we talk about the near-death experiences. Perhaps they don't have a life review if the NDE, like we talked about right at the beginning, was quite short. The question is, does everyone at some point, because if you die and you stay dead, you don't come back, you don't have an
Right.
NDE, you have a full death experience. How do we know that everyone has it, or is it just something that a near-death experiencer has? But then as we talk about shared death experiences, and you're saying that people have witnessed an element of a life review in a shared death experience, that makes me think that it's something that we all go through because it's part of that learning process, which is the whole point of being here. Does
Yeah,
that sound about right for you?
it does. If I'm a betting person, I certainly don't want to disregard people who have not had life reviews, because, as I said, it's a customized experience. But
Yeah.
my gut is telling me, because this is a school and because so much learning can be extracted from such an experience, that I would venture to guess that at some point, had that continued to progress, I would venture to guess 90, 95, 98% of people. I'm not going to say 100%, but I think the vast majority at some point, that would have been something that they hopefully would have benefited from tremendously.
Mm, definitely. It makes sense to me that we all have one at some point, and maybe like I didn't have one in my near-death experience, but I believe that my experience was probably quite brief, so that would make sense to me. Okay, next question. What do you think about one person who, with love, withdraws from self-destructive behavior both to save your own sanity and to let the person learn the hard way?
Yeah, I'm going to have to wrap my head around that one here for a second. What do you think about one person who, with love, withdraws from a self-destructive behavior? So something they're doing to themselves, I'm thinking, both to save
Yeah.
your own sanity and to let the person learn the hard way. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding that question. What's your conception of that question, Kirsty? And maybe that can help me
Yeah,
grasp,
Lorianne, if you wanna
maybe
reword it,
rephrase
we
it.
can rephrase it, we
I
can
want to
do
make sure I
that.
get it
But
right.
I would say it's if you need to pull away from someone, gosh, I hope I get this right, Lorianne, where maybe that seems like it's not a loving behavior to pull away from them.
Hmm.
If it's but for your own self-love, for your ability, your sanity, you have to pull away, but to them or to other people around them probably looks like that's very selfish or not caring. That's the way that I'd interpret that.
Okay. Yeah. So if that is the question, I'm going to go with Howard Storm talks about this in his book, My Descent into Death. He said, you know what? Sometimes you have to incarcerate people. Sometimes you have to put a restraining order on people. Sometimes you have to distance yourself from people. You're still doing it in unconditional love, but you're doing it because you're protecting yourself, or the path that you need to go no longer is one where you're in close association with them. So I think you can do that with unconditional love. And what you're doing is you're loving yourself in that situation. You're removing yourself from a potentially either physically harmful situation, or just that cycle we talked about before that you don't want to perpetuate. And I think there are certainly situations, as I said, sometimes people do need to we need to remove ourselves from some people just because it's not healthy for them and it's not healthy for us.
Okay. That makes sense. Lorianne actually just said that there was 2 parts of her comments, but some other
Okay.
questions came in between them, so I hadn't seen that. So the second part was, it's perceived by the recipient as, "How could you cut me off and leave me?" Which is what I thought. Is there
Hmm.
a spirit guide to help see both sides and show a positive outcome for each? So that, yeah, I love this. Like in the life review, have you got like a, what do you call that? Like a moderator or a mediator or
Mediator, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I actually put this whole thing together with the life review as I was trying to make sense of it. And I had this scene of like 5 people in a work setting. And what you can do is, in essence, see the thought bubbles going in their mind. What they're saying is probably one thing, but as one person's looking at this project, they're thinking, oh, it's almost 5 o'clock. It's time for me to get out of here. Another person's thinking, is this guy going to promote me, or is this woman going to promote me in this situation? So all these things that you think are happening on the surface, there's other things going on in their brain. And not only that, but now you're seeing their personality types, you're seeing their fears, you're seeing their frustrations, you're seeing the wounds that they may have had at different points of their life that cause them to react one way or another. So you get all these layers of understanding than just the one you see with your eyes. You see all these other layers, and now you understand, okay, that's why he's treating me that way. It's really not
Mm,
me. It's he had something happen to him a long time ago, and he never knew how to process that. And he still has that anger. And now I'm the punching bag, or I'm the person that it's easy to take out on because I'm not going to react back. And now in that life review, you understand that. And that's one of the things that I think is really important for all of us to look at is, yeah, eventually we're going to have that understanding down the road. But if we could start incorporating this life review understanding and this ripple effect that we have, and seeing things from different perspectives, and asking myself, would I want to be married to me? If we can do this now, we can change the rest of our life review. I was just reading Secrets of the Light from Daniel Brinkley, and many people might remember there was the movie made about him where he was a jerk and beating
mm,
everybody up, and he had his first
mm,
life review, and then he started this Twilight Brigade where he helped dying veterans in a hospice situation, basically help them see the light, as I've got the light shining in here on me. He helped them see the light and cross them over. He said, and then he had other NDEs, and he said in his future life reviews, they were all positive. He still saw some of the early stuff, but then the rest of his life, he saw and he got to feel the gratitude and the just appreciation that these veterans when nobody was around in some cases, here's Danny in helping them in their last hours here on the earth. So we can make changes moving forward. I have lots of regrets over the last 5 decades, but I can't change those. What I can change is hopefully share this info for me so I can use it better to make those apologies to people I need to make, even though it was 40 years ago, and then inspire other people to say, hey, moving forward, make some positive ripples in people's world versus just all the negative ones that just kind of happen.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, so interesting. Jeff, I'm aware that the light really is shining on you. Do you want to shut a blind or something? Do you want to make it more
What I'll
comfortable?
do is I'm going to slide over a little bit.
Yeah, I've been there, done that, and it's very difficult when you've got something shining in your face.
It's our new house, so we don't have blinds yet for that area, and we'll get something a little different in the back here.
It's all right. Still see your book there.
Excellent.
So while we're just doing this
for a second.
That's all good. While we're here, don't forget you can pop your questions into the comments there. Let us know what that is. And also, I'm just going to pop up and we've got Jeff's book there. So you can jump on there, lifelessonsfromheaven.com, and you can go and grab his book there. His book is outstanding. If you're enjoying the amount of research and actual decent content that's coming out of here, there is so much meaty content in this. I'm loving this, Jeff. Good. Then the first book is exactly the same. So go in and grab that book. That's there. Jeff, I loved Lorianne's question. I'm just going to pop back to the comments here. Okay. I really loved her question because it kind of links into what I was thinking about of what about, we were talking about children, and I know when we're younger, often we are, kids bully each other. We tease them, we're a little bit mean. What about unintentional pain? Or we do something, you have an accident and you harm somebody, but it was an accident. It was literally unintentional.
Yeah.
How does that show up in life reviews?
It's a great question. From my understanding is the intent is critical. It's even less so than whatever behavior happened. The focus is always on the intent. And that's what they say about the other side is you can pull the wool over people's eyes here or fool them or lie to them or manipulate them. On the other side, you are standing spiritually naked before the gods. They know every little trick you might have played, every little intention that you had. It's almost like they said the spotlights just shine down on you and everything else disappears. And now here is your life. What they say, the intent is critical. That's what you're evaluating yourself on is, did it come from love or did it come from selfishness? So as you're looking at these events, and yeah, you may have hurt somebody in a situation, but what you're going to get the credit for, or what you're really going to evaluate yourself on, is the intent that you brought to that situation, not necessarily the outcome. You'll see the outcome, but if it was totally unintended, then you won't hold it against yourself because you came from a place of truth and honesty and purity and love.
Definitely. Yep. It's quite a relief, isn't it? Because I know we've all done things. I've done things to hurt people and I'm going, how did that even happen? How did I hurt you?
Right.
Maybe I'm a bit clueless, but it's good to know that the ones that were like big things, actually, there's going to be a bit of understanding. And that's what Lorianne was talking on, is there going to be someone else there to sort of flash in the tables there? Yeah.
Well, and the thing about it too is they say that a lot of times, as I said, either the divine is there or our guides are there. And when we get to those tough areas, a lot of them will say, you know what, they'll stop it and they will shower and wave, send more love, pulsate more love to us and help us through that. And I think it was Howard Storm who said, hey, if I just watched this alone, I'd be a psychotic fool after this. I would feel so bad for the crazy life I had lived, but they weren't doing it to do that to me. They would shower me with love and just really help me through. Hey, you're here to learn this. You're here to see what you did. And we know some parts are going to be tough, but we're going to love you right through it.
That's really good, isn't it? Interesting that you talk about Howard Storm, because I know that he had quite a hellish experience at the beginning of his experience. That's why his book is his descent into death. One of the comments we have here is, I'd like to know more about negative NDEs. Now, we're talking life reviews, so I'm assuming that this is around the topic of negative NDEs. Have you got experiences where people have had these I guess, hellish experiences, these not very pleasant ones, and had a life review?
Yeah, so I love that question. Peter Panagore, and I'm not sure if I think you might have had Peter
Yeah,
on
he
one of your
show, yeah,
shows. He's got a
yeah.
really good part about hell and the life review because he said as he watched his life review and felt the pain, emotional, physical, the frustration, the anger that he caused to other people, he said that for him was like going through hell. And that's where when I've looked at this, and I put all this in our 10 life-changing lessons from heaven book there, but it seems like there's three ways that people conceive of hell. One is that darkness. Sometimes people go to a void, and if they're not really sure, okay, it's all darkness, I don't really hear anything, I don't really see anything. Some of them interpret that negatively, like, oh my goodness, what is this? Whereas others, it's like a velvety, really nice blackness, and it feels just good that there's just this waiting point. But some people interpret that as a hell, the void kind of thing. Then there's
Mm,
Peter Panagore, who when they go through the life review and they see all the negative stuff and feel all the negative stuff, oh my goodness, that was like hell to them. And then as you said, there are some people like Howard Storm who do have some more very unpleasant or distressing NDEs, as Nancy Evans Bush and the other researchers call them.
mm,
But the thing that I always take from that with Jeffrey Long and Kevin Williams, who've done a lot of study in this, is that those hellish experiences, they say, are typically temporary, they're self-imposed, and they're typically a period of reflection. And once that is over, typically there's the light, and here's the light again coming in, but there's
mm.
the light that you can look for and you can go toward it. So I would say when as relating to life reviews, for sure, there's some things that I'm not going to want to really re-experience again in my life review. And that's going to feel like hell to me, I'm sure, at that time. So that can be one
Yeah.
of the explanations for hell, is just re-experiencing those negative things again.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. That makes a lot of sense to me. And if that hasn't quite answered your question, intuitive one, and you actually want to know more about negative NDEs or distressing NDEs in general, just send me an email and I can point you in the direction for some of that information.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Nancy Evans Bush book is Dancing with the Dark, I think is what it's called. And she's really looked in depth into distressing or negative and hellish NDEs, whatever you want, whatever phrase you want to
Yeah.
put on them.
Yeah, there's quite a lot more research coming out, which is really interesting. We hosted a call just last weekend as well around that with somebody who's researched them, and there's a lot more coming to light. So it's great because that means that there's potentially more support networks in place, that it's not something that is so hard to talk about, which is really, really great. So just let me know if that's something you want more of. Happy to point you in the correct direction. All right, Margaret asks, does a life review help refocus a life purpose should the soul wish to be reincarnated?
I think it does. What you get to see in your life review is, I think, a couple things. And I really talk about two purposes. So, one, you have a purpose in making the world a better place. It seems like every one of us is given certain gifts and certain talents that are unique to us. And that when we find those and that we develop those and share those with the world, we accomplish our purpose here. We do what we came down here to do from a external standpoint. But I also think every one of us comes with a soul purpose, something that we want to work on. I think when we talked the first time, Kirsty, I talked about patience is one that I need to work on.
Yeah,
So
me
patience
too.
is one that, yeah, an internal thing. And then we get to see this life review, and it's like, okay, with your son, were you patient when it took him longer? It's like, no, I wasn't the first 20 years of his life. But now,
Yeah.
after I learned this, I got a little bit better over time. So I do think that when you see this life review, you'll see the patterns in your life. You'll see the opportunities where you got to share your gifts. And did you share them? For me, writing this book was hard because I didn't know if I
Mm,
wanted to put this out there, but that felt like my life's purpose. And if I had died with my first book never being published, I would have looked
mm.
back at this life review and said, Jeff, you didn't do what you came here to do. And I would have
Mm,
felt so disappointed in myself. So I got it out there. I'm still working through, okay, this is a new area that I'm being called to add some things with. But I think that's what we'll see in our lives, opportunities where we did act and make a difference. And a lot of times what we'll see is I should have stood up for that person. I should
mm,
have not let somebody gossip about that other person. I should have lived fearlessly. I never did what I came here to do because I was scared to do it. So I
mm.
think you'll see all those things in your life review and you'll, hopefully be proud of, yeah, I broke through that fear, or no, I might have to come back here and give this a try again and see if I can
Yeah.
break through that fear the next time around.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the purpose pieces are often the hard things that we struggle, the things that we struggle the most with or we don't want to do the most are potentially the purpose pieces that we're here to do. And like you say, we've got all these lessons that we need to go through. We've got all of these things, but that's part of the whole point of it
The
is to
hero's
push through.
journey. Anybody who's
Yeah.
followed the hero's journey, I could feel all of that of going through, and most of the fears I had created were up here. They weren't
Yeah.
out there. They were all in my own brain. But it took me 2 years to work through getting this book out there because I was scared of how people would look at me or think of me if I put this out there, this fringe NDE kind of topic of how are people going to look at me? And I
Mm,
went through the hero's journey and I'm still going through it. I'm probably not exactly where I need to be, but I'm getting there. And I've seen what, for me, the gratitude is seeing the difference that this has made not only in my life. I hope I'm a little bit better a person than I was when this first happened. But as you said, we've shared this now with a ton of parents who've had children pass away, which in my mind is probably one of the worst hells you could ever experience.
mm,
And
mm,
so many of them are finding a bit of a sense of comfort and peace and hope, knowing that their kids are more than well taken care of. They're still around. They're going to see them again. They're going to a blissful, beautiful afterlife. And in from heaven's time, it's not going to be long until they're there.
mm,
And that's one of the programs, as we talked about, Kirsty. We've got one on if anybody has had a child pass away. As I said, I've been working with parents and doing book studies with them. And we've got a program coming up May 5th that's called Shattered to Shining, and how parents who've lost children can find hope and healing after child loss. So I'm sure you can probably link something to that as well.
absolutely.
But
Yep. So if you
so
were
it's
on the YouTube,
Wednesday in the US, 8:30 Eastern time.
okay, perfect. If you're on YouTube, I'll put that as a comment. If you're on Facebook, I'll just put a link down below as well.
Awesome.
Absolutely amazing. So, if you have any questions, now is your last chance. I think we've been through all of our questions today. If you have any other questions that you want to ask Jeff around these topics, now is your chance. You've got just a couple of moments. But, Jeff, as we're talking here, like I said right at the beginning, and I think I was even saying this before we jumped on live, I find it quite hard. I can get quite overwhelmed by the concept of a life review. And that you were saying, sorry, I'm reading comments as I go, so I'm a little bit distracted. I get very overwhelmed by the comment of the thought of a life review. So have I done my best? And then Lori-Ann's brought up a point, which is really relevant to me of how you said it as well. Have I been the best wife? Have I been the best mother? Have I been the best daughter? And starting to think of all of the different relationships in my life. And where I get overwhelmed is there's so many people in my life. How can I be the best for everyone and everything all the time? And yet love myself. And there's a defining line, and I think I know that, but I think what I've really got out of today personally is this domino piece and just how we can be the breaker of the dominoes falling, and we can also be the one that pushes the dominoes in the correct direction with the correct things. We can line up the dominoes of love and the dominoes that are going to have these ripple effects for positive, not, when we think life reviews, maybe it's just me, but I tend to think of all the things I did wrong. It's a bit
Right.
of an insecure place, maybe. But it's like when you get summoned to the headmaster's office or the principal's office when you're a child, you can't help but think, what have I done wrong? Versus he's going to reward me for something, or she's going to tell me I've done great in my maths test or something like that. We often come to a place where we're thinking of the negative elements. So Jeff Janssen, I've so loved this. My mind is just racing with all these things. And as you've been talking, I'm going, how can I bless someone today? What could I do to start another ripple effect? And I want to be just
Right.
ripple effects everywhere. So I think probably our listeners are resonating with that as well. There's a few people come on, just say huge thank you. They are really grateful for everything that you've done, everything that you've shared today. I am so glad that even though this felt a bit uncomfortable and putting your book out there felt a bit uncomfortable, that you did that, that you actually continued on through that, because I know that so many lives have been changed. So many lives have been changed by the work that you're doing with the parents who have lost their children. There will be listeners who resonate with that as well. I get a lot of emails around past people, whether they're okay, whether they're loved, whether they can communicate, different things like that. So I know that that work will be sending out massive ripple effects too. So couple of comments saying thank you both. Thank you for your time. This is great. Thank you. This has been really helpful. So also Margaret said this is hopeful. I love that word. So I guess that's probably a combination of helpful and hopeful, bringing hope. So
We'll take it. Yeah, exactly. And everybody can obviously
absolutely.
create their own little ripple effect, as you said.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like I'm really like on a buzz. I want to go and create more ripples, do more good things and stop the negative things. And that's where just saying hello to somebody or smiling at somebody in the street, we
Simple as
knock
that.
it down. It's not a big thing. It could be a breaker. It could be a domino that doesn't knock down and carry on that process. So wonderful. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in. If you have loved this, don't forget to subscribe. You'll stay updated for future podcast episodes, but also these live sessions. And don't forget to tell your friends about it. We want to grow the channel so that we can get these experiences out there. I appreciate every one of you who supports the show, who listens, signs in, joins onto our episodes. Thank you to everyone. And Jeff Janssen, thank you so much to you, because without you today, this information wouldn't have been able to ripple its way out there. So wonderful. And thank you for everything that you are doing.
Yeah, my pleasure. And right back at you, Kirsty. You obviously have given people a platform and an opportunity by interviewing so many great people and sharing that. So I'm going to be I'd love to have a seat at your life review and see all the ripple
Oh my goodness.
created all across the world, which is exciting.
Oh, it's a bit overwhelming. I want to create more. There's a lot of stuff that isn't so good. So yeah, we're all a work in progress, aren't we?
Hopefully it balances out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But Jeff, thank you so much.
Yeah, my
Thank
pleasure.
you.